So good afternoon and evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. It is my great pleasure to welcome all of you to this webinar entitled Spotlight on the Chairwomen of the Armenian Bar Association over 3 decades. It's a program that has been in the making for a while, and we are recording it on the occasion of Women's History Month. My name is Taline Sahakian. I'm the current chair of the Armenian Bar Association, and I'm happy to present my co-moderator, Anahid Ugurlayan, who is the co-chair of our Domestic Violence Awareness Committee. We are joined by 5 past women chairs of the Armenian Bar Association: Tamar Hajian, who was chair from 1992 to 93, and again from 98 to 99. Professor Lousin, who was chair from 1995 to 1998. Esayan, who was chair from 2001 to 2002. Sonya Nersessian, who was chair from 2008 to 2010. And Varpetian, who was chair from 2020 to 2022. If you don't know them, you will get to know them tonight. And I'm going to give everyone an opportunity to present themselves in a minute. But before we do that, I wanted to speak a little bit about what I hope we all are going to get out of tonight's talk. We initially started emailing about this idea last year amongst ourselves, the people on the webinar. And we wanted to get everyone together. But it didn't work out for scheduling reasons. Of course, sometimes that happens. But the idea remained in our brains and in our minds, and we kind of stuck to it. We circled back, and I'm so glad we're pulling this off this year. It's my hope that we're going to walk away from this celebrating these wonderful women, their career paths, but also I hope it'll be retrospective on the bar and a celebration of the bar, because as Armenians, we can't help but being tied to history. You know, we live it, we remember it, we honor it, you know, starting from a young age. So if, as an Armenian organization, we really need to know where we've been to know where we're going. So there's a lot of history that these ladies have lived through together. And I'm thrilled that that history is going to be told and celebrated and recorded tonight. We want this to be an engaged conversation. So if you have any questions, please type them in the Q&A and drop them in the chat, and we'll get to them. But without further ado, I'm going to start by asking each of our panelists to give us some background about themselves. And including what is the path that brought them to the law. So we'll start in order of chairmanship, maybe with Tamar.
I guess that's me. I'm Tamar Hajian, Tamar Babayan Hajian. I was born in Teaneck, New Jersey at a time when life was slow and mellow, if anybody remembers the Fantastics. And when women were not routinely admitted to major universities. I grew up in Livingston, New Jersey, where we were an hour away from any Armenian anything. Today, I'm happy to say there's an Armenian church there, right where our next door neighbor, congregational minister, predicted it would be. It was his church. He willed it to Armenians. I went to Wellesley College and then to much later to Boston College Law School and Boston University. I'm ashamed to say I have an LLM that is so far out of date. It's not worth mentioning, but my path to law school was a somewhat different one. At that time, when I graduated from college, I married my husband, Hajian, a mathematician, and had 3 children in short order. And it wasn't until the youngest was 7 that I started law school. Very unorthodox for those days. I think there were half a dozen of us women in my class. As time went on, when I graduated, I looked for a part-time job. Again, very difficult situation. Everyone told me I'd never amount to anything. I'd never get anywhere with a part-time job. But I was fortunate enough to be the child of unusual parents who encouraged me, who gave me values, who gave me confidence, and who told me I could do anything. And as time went on, with a lot of help from my husband, who did double duty, I got through law school. I found my part-time job, and eventually I became the vice president and general counsel of Brandeis University, where I spent the bulk of my career. But my proudest accomplishments, above and beyond my children, who were the most important in my life, and the job that I considered the best job, I became very involved with Armenian affairs throughout, from the time I was a poli-sci major and throughout all the changes that happened after I went to Armenia in 1967 and saw for myself what Soviet life was all about, and then continued to go over the years after the children were of a decent age. Until in the early 80s, I thought, well, I'm not going to bother anymore. The only thing that people here care about is one more dress, one more trip, one more meal. And then 1988 happened. And everything changed. This is a letter from Rafi Hovhannisyan inviting me to the Hovhannisyan's home, along with a lot of other people, after he'd gone through Martindale-Hubbell to talk about establishing a bar association. And we can talk about that later, but since I'm hogging up so much time, I'll just finish by saying that in the late 80s, early 90s, I started working with Tom Samuelian, who was a law student at Harvard at the time, his third career. And after he worked for Morgan, Lewis, and Bacchus for a time, and then went on to, oh dear, Ann, help me. Why am I?
Latham, was it?
Steptoe?
No, it may have been Steptoe.
Steptoe and Johnson, that's right. He said, I'm going to go to Moscow and work in their Moscow office, and then I'll see what happens. So he eventually made it to Almaty, set up their office there. And in the early 90s, he started going to Armenia regularly. And we formed Arlex International Limited, an American law firm in Yerevan, first chance we got. That was a venture. And I spent, from the time I left Brandeis in 2000 until very recently, that has been the focus of my legal work. Tom did all the transactional work. We hashed it all out in between. So that's my way to the bar. And the reason I feel so proud of all these things is because I have great faith in Armenian women. I think we're the bedrock of our civilization. We've been privileged to have a heritage handed to us, and as accomplished lawyers, one and all, it's our duty as well as our pleasure to serve.
Thank you. Thank you, Tamar. I think we're going to come back to that letter in Arlex, I think, during the night, but let me give the floor to Professor Lousin to tell us.
Well, I say ditto to everything Tamar said. No, I'm a native Chicagoan, and I don't speak very much Armenian. My German is much better than my Armenian, but my mother was an Armenian by choice. When my father, who was a survivor of the Armenian genocide from Sis, finally made it to this country, he came to a little Quaker college in Iowa called William Penn. And there was a young lady taking down all of the data, for registration, and she could pronounce and spell Lusinian. And that so impressed him that he married her. Now, that was their running joke until the day he died. And my mother became very active in the Armenian community. She was of old Quaker heritage way back. So I'm really schizophrenic. My father was an immigrant refugee and my mother is old Yankee, you know. But the point is that we grew up in Chicago, very much part of the Armenian community. My sister, who many of you know, and I have always been active here. And I went to Grinnell College in Iowa, then I studied in Europe, based at the University of Heidelberg for a year, came back, went to the University of Chicago Law School. I was going to do international commercial law, but then fate intervened and I got a job at the Illinois Constitutional Convention in 1970. And I realized if this constitution is adopted, I got a career waiting for me. And it was adopted. I got a career, I made a career out of it. And I've been in government for about 4 years after the convention. Then I started teaching here in 1975 at what was then the John Marshall Law School. I've been here 48 years. And I have held several governmental posts, but mostly I've been teaching here. Now, I went to Armenia for the first time in 1978, and I know what Tamar means. You looked at the Soviet situation, you looked at it and said, what can I do? Really, we couldn't do very much. However, at least I had been there. And now when the Armenian Bar Association was formed, I was unable to make it to that house in Santa Monica, that meeting, but I was thrilled at it. I immediately joined up. So I guess I'm kind of a founding member. And then I went to the meeting in Detroit in September 1991. That changed everything. Tamar and I roomed together and we went to the Greek Town restaurant, you remember? All of us went on the People Mover to the Greek Town restaurant. Tamar gave a toast. She said, as we're eating here tonight in Greek Town on Saturday evening, tomorrow is already September the 21st in Armenia. And our people are voting probably overwhelmingly to legally secede from the Soviet Union. You know, and you think back, how could we be anything except impressed? And ever since then, you know, I think we've done a perfectly splendid job. Sure, we've had disagreements about what to do, but I think we've been really wonderful. I didn't ever expect to be president, but Tamar did a dirty trick. In 1994, somebody said to her, call Ann and ask her to be the chair next year. So I protested, I don't know any Armenian. She said, what do you need to know? We'll translate for you if necessary. So I became the chair in 1995. And then they said next year, and then next year, finally in 1998, I said, enough, I don't have any more ideas. You know, so they gave it back to Tamar. And it's been really a wonderful, it's been a remarkable adventure and it's still going on. We still get people coming here from Armenia. All of us go over there, I think, fairly regularly. I was last there in January of 2018. And you know, one of the most moving things was Tom, and I'll conclude with this. Tom Samuelian took me around to meet several people, including the president of the Constitutional Court. And he explained what I did, constitutional law, commercial law. And the president, through an interpreter, said, Professor, could you help me understand separation of powers? And I thought, you know, if only my father were here. You don't know what I mean? You know, that he could see, he would have said, my little girl is helping Armenia in this highly specialized way, right, Tamar? How that would have been. And we could get very discouraged often on the. I invited the gentleman I just mentioned to dinner. I gave a big dinner the last night we were there, only to find out he'd been arrested earlier that day and held for 2 or 3 days, I'm sure on specious charges, and then released. So, I mean, it's going to be a very tough time all the way through, but it's the journey that is more important than than when we actually get there, right? Okay, now I will do the highly intelligent thing that I rarely do, and that is shut up.
Thank you, Professor Lousin, for sharing that. That was very special. I want to give the floor to Lisa next.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Taline. I'm Lisa Esayan. I don't think I can possibly live up to a fraction of what Tamar and Anne have shared, so I'm probably going to be briefer than them. But by way of background, my sister and I, my sister is on this Zoom somewhere as a participant. We are from Huntington Valley, Pennsylvania, which is a suburb of Philadelphia and happens to be, believe it or not, a hotbed of Armenians. A lot of famous Armenians are from Huntington Valley, Pennsylvania. The Momjian family, who are famous in the legal community, the Vospigian family, who are just famous in general. Our parents were both born in the Philadelphia area and were very, very steeped in the Armenian community, and helped to found one of the churches there. But interestingly, like Anne, there's some Quaker involvement, which I think has to do with growing up in the Philadelphia area, where the Quaker movement was, is so much of the history there. Anyway, I was very interested in all things Armenian growing up, but I was the youngest person in the family and somehow managed to really not learn Armenian except for a few choice words, which I won't share. But not four-letter words in the type you're thinking of, but sort of perhaps choice words. And but fast forward to the Armenian Bar Association, and I will say that I don't remember how I came to be involved, although I suspect it was either Anne Lousin, who, now by that time I was living in Chicago, and Anne Lousin pretty much made it her business to find every young Armenian lawyer in Chicago. So that might have been it. Or it was Harry Churkin, because he comes back into the story in a moment. He was he and his family were longtime friends of our families from Philadelphia. So anyway, after I went to college at Princeton, which is now principally famous for being an excellent basketball team, as opposed to other things it used to principally be famous for. And I went to law school at Northwestern, and there I am in Chicago. And somehow I get involved in the Armenian Bar Association. And about the language thing, I mean, one of the things that was great about the Armenian Bar Association was that a lot of people didn't speak Armenian, or they spoke very little, or maybe they knew the same choice words that I knew, and that was about it. And at least when I was involved, while there were a lot of wonderful people from the LA area, there were people from all over the country. And that was a revelation to me, that there were Armenian lawyers in Texas, who knew? And Armenian lawyers in Canada. Oh my goodness, I had no idea. And that was I have to say, that was one of the star attractions for me for my early years in the Armenian Bar Association. We had a number of mid-year and maybe annual meetings in Canada. And I cannot speak highly enough of Harry Dekranyan and Vaskan Kabayan and Bob Adurian and the others who I met from Canada. And so I think I became chair because Harry Churkin told somebody else, I'm not sure who, that he wanted me to be the next chair. I think that's what happened. And I was like, are you sure he's talking about me? And Lucy was the executive director, at that time. And one of the things that I remember most fondly about when I was chair and Lucy was executive director, and I think either Zabin Sananyan or Ara Tromblian was vice chair, was we started a scholarship fund. We were like, this organization is at the point where it's got to have a scholarship fund. And we just said, that's it, we're starting a scholarship fund. And I think we might have started it with $500 or $1,000 or something. And they were like, whoa, how are we going to administer this? Well, we'll give out $250 a year. We'll have a go at it. And now, of course, and Viken Simonia was involved in that. And now, of course, isn't it, ladies, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it the Viken Simonian Scholarship? I mean, so it of course, fittingly became the Viken Simonian Scholarship, but it started at that time. And I have worked throughout my legal career at the law firm of Kirkland and Ellis. I do litigation. I have sometimes wondered why I have stayed at one place for 33 years. And when we get to the advice giving portion of this discussion, maybe I'll give some advice on that. The last thing I'll say is about Armenia. I haven't been there in a while, but since you all shared some experiences of being in Armenia, I was there in 2004 and 2005 a couple of times. At that time, I was on the board of directors of the Armenian Assembly, so I went with them. And we went to Karabakh on the helicopter. And one of the people we met in Karabakh was the then Speaker of the Parliament, Oleg Esayan. And I was introduced to him, and he was like, oh my, in Armenian, of course, oh my goodness, you're my long lost cousin. There's no way we were related, but it was the same last name, and it was just fantastic. I'm standing in this like awe shock, can't believe I'm in Nagorno-Karabakh, Artsakh of all places, and I'm getting hugged by the Speaker of the Parliament.
Wow. That is pretty amazing. So Sonya.
I can't top that story, Lisa. That was really.
There's no need to top any stories.
Okay, I'm Sonya Nersessian. I'm an attorney outside of Boston, Massachusetts. I grew up in Dedham, Massachusetts. My dad was a Punahai from Greece. My mother was born here, and I was the first person in my family to get a graduate degree and the first person to become a lawyer. And I think part of the reason why I became a lawyer is because my dad always wanted to be a lawyer. And sadly, World War II intervened and he never had the opportunity. But I sort of started a trend in that I became a lawyer. My sister became a lawyer. My daughter is a lawyer. So we sort of have a lot of women in the family, in the immediate family, that are women. And also Tamar is my sister-in-law, also a lawyer. So we have, I've been involved in a bunch of different organizations and have run a bunch of different organizations. One of them being the Boston Estate Planning Council, which is a group of about, I don't know, at the time I ran it, it was about 1,000 people. And it's everyone that has anything to do with estate planning. And that's the type of attorney I am. I'm trusts and estates and tax. And it was a very interesting experience doing that. And then after that, I became chair of the Armenian Bar Association. A word about how people become chair of the Armenian Bar Association. You've sort of heard everybody else's story.
Mhm.
The time I was chair, I was really hoping that we could set some sort of path to leadership, because it seems so haphazard that all of us became chair in such unusual ways. I think in a way it's a very wonderful organization because it gives people the opportunity to step forward and do things that they maybe never thought they would do before. But I do think at some point we need to be less haphazard about how people get into the chair. While I was chair, the one thing that I really wanted to focus on, and we did focus on, was reparations. And that was a rather thoughtful exercise. We had Catherine Kesejan, who's an international arbitrator and French Armenian attorney, speak to us. We had Professor David Nersessian, who's now at Babson. He was at Harvard, I think, at the time, or maybe BU, when we were having this discussion, but it was just a very mind expanding exercise to think about reparations at the time. And that was around 2008, 2010. That's sort of been shoved aside lately because we have other issues that are on the front burner. And one of them right now is occupying a little bit of my time, and that is I'm working with Taline and Lousin and Armen and several others trying to preserve the cultural and religious heritage in Artsakh that is now under Azeri control. So I'm going to make a little pitch here, and if there's anybody out there who would like to help in this endeavor, please contact me separately. And know that I have a real belief that we are 1 degree of separation from anybody that we need to talk to that might be able to help. So if any of you have any connections that you might want to let us know about, even if you don't have time to help us in this endeavor, if you think of something that we should be doing, or if you have an idea in terms of who we should be connecting with, please help us do that. 2 other things I want to say about the Armenian Bar Association. One is you have incredible adventures with the Armenian Bar Association. One of the most incredible adventures that I had, besides all the fabulous travel adventures that routinely happen. And P.S., there's a wonderful travel adventure coming up to Jerusalem at the end of June. And if you haven't heard about it and you want to go, please contact Taline. Taline, I'm throwing this in your lap. And secondly, the adventures involve things sometimes in your own backyard. And one of the things that we did in Boston is we had a reception to honor the 3 Armenian judges at the time that were elevated. One was Judge Gabriel Hajian, one was Judge Marianne Sahakian, and one was Judge Rafi Esayan. And we gave this wonderful reception at Legal Seafoods overlooking the harbor, that branch of it. And what was most incredible about it is as we were fating these 3 wonderful judges, Deval Patrick, our governor at the time, was in the next room. So he wandered in to say hello, and so did Maura Healy. And at the time, she was the Attorney General of Massachusetts. So here we were, of a small group of Armenian lawyers celebrating 3 of our own, and all of a sudden we had a very happening sort of party with all these political people coming as well. I think the last thing I want to say is this group is so committed and does such wonderful work in so many different areas. And Lucy's going to tell you a little bit about some of the areas that she's been involved in. But I always think about that Margaret Mead quote, the one that starts with, "Never doubt that a small group of committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, they're the only thing that ever has."
Mm-hmm.
I think this group really has an incredible potential to do wonderful things. And I'm really proud that I'm a member of this organization. I'm going to hand it off to you.
Let me add one thing. That reparation stuff you were talking about, part of it began in 2005 when we were in Armenia, and Tom Samuelian grabbed me, and he basically dictated the proclamation, the statement of what we wanted in reparations. He said, now, with your experience in government, you know how to write all of these things into laws and resolutions. So I'm taking notes. And I put the whole thing together, sent it to him, and he made changes. And that was what I had forwarded to the Armenian Bar Association board. It took 10 years, but that has been what I think the best statement on reparations that's been produced by the Armenian people yet. And it's all through Tom.
Yeah. And Anne, there was that reparations seminar that was at Howard University that the Armenian Bar.
Yes, I was there.
You remember that?
Vividly.
Yeah, and it was the Black community as well as the Native American community,
Exactly.
with the lawyers that they sent as representatives, all talking about reparations. And I think they were looking towards the Armenians As
They
different
were.
ideas of how to do it.
Mhm.
Wow, wow, that's amazing. And if there's a plug, there's another reparation related seminar this Saturday.
Yes.
We're co-sponsoring, so.
And one of our members, Karkonian, is going to speak and talk about what we put together in
Yeah,
that 2015.
yeah, and Armen Nersessian is also going to speak, so we're
It's okay.
good representation. So Lucy, let me give the floor.
Before I introduce myself, I want to say we received a wonderful congratulatory email from our founder, Rafi Hovanessian, almost immediately after establishing the Armenian Bar Association. As you've heard, Armenia became independent. Rafi moved to Armenia and became the first foreign minister. So it was really nice to get that message from him. It's 5 o'clock in the morning in Armenia, so he said he would happily watch the recording. I also want to acknowledge our very first chairperson, David Balabanyan, who is on this call. I was really pleased that he was able to join us. He's in the Bay Area. I came to the Armenian Bar Association. I was actually born in Yerevan, Armenia. Let me correct that. I was born in the Soviet Republic of Armenia, and my family moved to the US when I was very young in 1980. We moved to the Los Angeles area. And while we are somewhat spoiled today with the Armenian stores and markets and churches and all of these really wonderful Armenian activities and community events, when our family moved here, that was a very, very small community. And we had no family. We knew no one here. And so I went through the public school system. I went to USC. And then when I got to law school, I looked around to see if I could find my people. And I immediately found the Armenian Bar Association. I think at the time when I was at Southwestern, Southwestern probably had one of the larger Armenian law student populations, and that continues to this day. And as a result of that, we've had some really great partnerships with that law school. But I remember I signed up for the student mentorship program, and Denise Darmanyan, who is also listening in, she was the Student Affairs Committee chair, and Denise sent me a letter in the mail. At the time, I was interested in becoming an international lawyer, and she said that I had been paired up with Governor George Deukmejian as my mentor. And so where else could an immigrant Armenian girl with no contacts, no connections, nothing more than, my name, be able to make that kind of a connection? And those of you who know Governor Deukmejian, you may remember, but the advice that he gave me was, Lucy, there's always room for one more good person in whatever it is that you want to do. So don't let things hold you back. And so I went on from there, graduated. I received a call. Well, actually, I went to one of my first Armenian bar meetings at the Universal Sheraton. I think that was in 1995. And I graduated in 96, and I received a call from Professor Lousin, and she said, we'd like for you to be the executive director. I said, can I at least study and take the bar first? She said, sure, take your time. So after I did that, I was working in a small firm, and they were very supportive of this additional duty and role that I took with the Armenian Bar. I became the executive director until I think about 2003. I got to meet some really exceptional people. And I shared with the group that we had one of our annual meetings at in Las Vegas. And I was helping run the meeting, and I had the registration list. And it was pretty hectic making sure that everyone was in and all the speakers were there and all of the logistics were taken care of. And then when it came time for lunch and everyone sat down, I looked across the room, and in the audience were two Armenian California Supreme Court justices, Justice Armand Arabian and Justice Marvin Baxter. Also there was our first Armenian DA, Bob Filibosian, who has joined the call. Senator Chuck, at the time, Senator Chuck Puchigian, who is now a Court of Appeal justice. And all of these really wonderful lawyers from all over the country, many of whom continue to be my dearest, dearest friends. And so I go back to how grateful I am that this community was available to me, and that I was able to grow professionally with some really wonderful role models. And I look to you, Anne, and to Tamar and Lisa and Sonya, all of you who came before me, and quite a bit that I've learned from Taline, who has come after me, but and is quite a bit younger than me in leadership skills and style and approach, how to conduct yourself in meetings. So I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunities that the Armenian Bar made available to me. I became the chairwoman in 2020. I think 2 weeks later, the war on Artsakh started, and that threw us into an entirely different direction. Again, everyone in the bar rose up to do their very best. Over 300 people reached out to the Armenian Bar Association to say, how can I help? And I'm happy to say that in the course of the last couple of years, and still, the Armenian Bar has produced well over 20 reports to whatever body, governmental body we had the opportunity to appeal to. We've written to multiple UN special rapporteurs, multiple UN bodies. We've created programming and institutions. We've created advisory roles within various governmental bodies in Armenia. And we have a very special skill set. No, we're not doctors. We don't run into the middle of a battlefield and help, injured soldiers. But the work that we did was admirable. And we made the commitment very early on to say, our people have suffered a genocide. And when they came to, there were no facts, there were no evidence, there was nothing that we could point to make our case in a court of law, and that we were not going to allow that to happen this time. So we made a commitment to document, to capture evidence, and to store evidence, and to create the correct narrative from the perspective of the Armenian community. And I'm so grateful, not just to the people who are on this call, but everyone else who rose and answered the call to action. And very proud to have been the chair of the Armenian Bar.
Thank you so much, Lucy, and thank you to all of you. Your perspectives on how you, just started your careers and your experiences in the bar are so varied, and just provide a fantastic picture about not just the organization, but just your own, how you flourished in your careers and how you've inspired others. So, to that, I thought I would shift gears a little bit and ask you, what experiences or anecdotes you could share that you think would be helpful to female law students or lawyers in the beginning of their careers. So let's start with Professor Lousin.
Same thing I say to the men students I have. Everything you do, every committee you're on, every organization you're in is really a kind of an interview for your next job. Somebody will see how you behave, well or badly, and later on there will be a statement, gee, maybe we should get somebody for this job or that job. Saying, I know somebody, he did a very nice job with the committee that I'm on. Or we don't want that person, he's a real jackass. And it will follow you. So you build up your career almost serendipitously. You don't know who's going to be recommending you or dissing you later on. So just behave yourself and do a good job. Everything that you do, every committee in law school, Student Bar Association work, every job you have in the summer, just try to do the best you can.
That's excellent advice. Tamar?
I don't think I could add more. I think Anne said it the way any of us could. We're living in a world with so many challenges and change that's taking place at a pace far greater than the law, than philosophy, than our ability to modernize things to cope. And it's not just AI, it's everything. There's a wonderful piece in the New York Times yesterday about this, how it's everything everywhere.
Yeah.
And this is the biggest challenge I see for young people, trying to find a place in this world that is so different from when I practiced law and when I began, and we did contracts with a handshake. Hard to believe that we did. It's a very big challenge for young people, but I think women, because of their multiple roles and they're having to juggle so many things, are particularly well adept at finding a way through that. So I say, have confidence and plunge forward.
Excellent, thank you. And what would you say to female attorneys who are in the mid stages of their careers? Lisa?
I would say don't be afraid to try something new. That's what I was going to say actually to the young people as well. Because if I have a regret, it is being at the same job for 33 years. It has plenty of advantages, but I actually wish that I had done a couple of different things along the way. Luckily, I did a lot of extracurricular things and had a lot of the experiences that Anne is describing in terms of committees and service and whatnot. But I think that women in particular at all stages, whether mid stages or younger, tend to have a little bit of lack of confidence in their ability to take on something new. Actually, that's in Michelle Obama's autobiography. She was afraid to switch from her job at a corporate law firm to working in a very interesting position at the University of Chicago. And if she was afraid, I mean, come on,
Right.
wherever anybody's going to be afraid. So just give it thought, analyze whatever it is that you're looking at doing that's a different position, a different job, a career change, but don't be afraid to do it. And the other thing I would say again to either mid-level or younger is this relates to some of the earlier comments about how much is going on in the world today. Don't be afraid to ask for help in terms of various kinds of counseling help that might be available, career counseling, just sort of general counseling. Maybe others here will disagree with this, but I really don't believe there's a stigma on that anymore. And who cares if there is, because there's a lot of resources available for a lot of different kinds of help, and men, women, young, old should feel that they can seek it out and take advantage of it.
Thank you. Sonya?
this is sort of following along with what everybody else is saying, but there's a Latin saying that translated means fortune favors the bold.
Mhm.
I think women need to be bolder. And if I were giving advice to a younger attorney, I would say not so much don't be afraid to try new things, but don't be afraid to branch out into areas that maybe are not as established areas of law as they are now. Don't be afraid to be a pioneer. Move forward into these new areas that maybe we don't understand, but as older attorneys, but that are going to be the areas of law that are going to flourish in the future. And be a leader.
Great advice. Lucy?
I've decided I'm going to keep all my answers to one-word answers because I want to go back and listen to everybody else speak. In particular, about some of the good old days of the things that we used to do. But I would agree with what everyone said. And I would say if you're midway through your career, also step out and be a mentor. Try to help someone else coming up behind you. Open doors for people. That's happened for me, and I look to the women on the Zoom. So yeah, again, I'm going to say very little from now on. By the way, I've roomed with Lousin at Armenian Bar meetings. She's put me up too. So yeah, I remember fondly all of the meetings. I got to travel all throughout the US in going to these Armenian bar meetings, which were a lot of fun. So yeah, Tamar, you've roomed with Ann? I have too.
Everybody's heard me snore. Yeah.
So picking up on what you just said, Lucy, maybe we can share about some mentorship anecdotes. I mean, things that, people who've mentored you, or, folks that you've mentored, and, things that have stayed with you, some memories. Like I could say from myself, when I started in the law, I was at a firm in Canada. I was from Canada too, Lisa. So I started working there, and there was a senior partner who said, we're going to have to do these sessions. We're going to have to sit down together once a week, and I'm going to have to mentor you. And she pulled out this book, and she said, I'm going to give you this book. And it was called Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office.
Yeah.
And she wanted to sit down with me and go through the book. I mean, I don't remember anything from the book, and I don't have a corner office, so I probably probably didn't follow the advice, but it stayed with me that she was making such a big effort, to try to mentor me and kind of give me some guidance. So if you can share some anecdotes that you have, that you carry. Professor Lousin?
About what? What do you
About
want?
Mentorship.
Oh, I do it all the time. I mean, if you've had 6,000 alumni as I have, you're constantly mentoring. They parade in and out of this office. The one question I won't answer is every now and then some guy will introduce me to his girlfriend and then say, do you think I should marry her? I said, I'm not going there. But anything else I'll talk about.
That's great. Sonya?
I think women are very generous in terms of their time. And I think if you find somebody that you think might be able to help you and approach them, I think they're not going to say no to you. And similarly, I think you pass it on. Women tend to pass their treatment of how they've been treated on to the next generation. So I think it becomes an ongoing sort of circle. If somebody helps you, you want to help somebody else and pay it forward. And I think it's not difficult to do. And I just read a little thing here from Larissa. I'm so tickled that you have a niche area of law. I'm going to be in touch with you. And I think also that it's fabulous that there are so many women on this particular webinar that are interested in all of us and how we got to where we are.
Tamar?
Well, I've had a lot of mentorship from men, maybe because
too.
of the times. And I want to acknowledge David Balabanyan's unprecedented help when I got stuck in California politics within the Bar Association and really had no idea what to do. And he very calmly said to me, well, there's this side and there's that side, and you're on neither side. So plow on, ignore them. It worked. I think lots of times we women think that we can solve every problem in the world because we're used to having a kind, nurturing nature in general. And sometimes we just have to face the facts that we can't and move on. And I just offer that. I also want to say that I have so much gratitude toward all the people who helped so much when we were in crises, perhaps not to the level that Lucy had to face during the war, but we went through several iterations of war, and it was not pleasant and not helpful. And I don't think we ever, as individuals, would have stuck to what we did without the help and mentorship of the people in the Bar Association who reached out. And that's all I would say.
Lucy?
I go back to the comment that I made earlier. I think I learned, I was sharing with the group earlier, conflict of interest from Lisa Esayan in watching her as she handled a touchy issue on the board when she was the chair. The way that she presented the issue and the way that she stepped away from it was something that I learned on the spot there. So I've learned quite a bit from the people here, and I've already said that. So like, I was serious when I said I'm going to say very little because it's so interesting to listen to everyone else.
Lisa, anything to add? Or
I guess I'm just going to add something that's it's not exactly mentorship, but it relates a little bit to what Lucy was saying, which is you just by conducting yourself in a way that you're comfortable with, that you can live with, and by expressing helpful, constructive ideas about how to approach issues, and by doing your share of the work, you are cultivating people, you are inspiring other people to do the same, right? So even people you might not expect. I mean, I've worked in groups where I was sure that so-and-so, whoever it was, thought I was an idiot and didn't like me. And it turned out that I don't know what so-and-so thought originally, but they had come to think I was okay. So just by, like I said, conducting yourself in a good manner, you are mentoring others by showing them the same way.
Yeah, I would add, with mentorship, just to piggyback off of what Sonya said, sometimes, it's so important to pay it forward. And it's, I feel like it's often a knee-jerk reaction. And there might be some people who are just shy and they don't feel like they can ask for help or advice. And so I often find that I'll just automatically tell someone, oh, you should attend this seminar. This is a really great place to network with people and so on. And you just never know, that maybe that one event will, spur somebody to go and meet somebody and make new connections. So I think it's always good to just err on the side of being helpful, because you know, I think it's you know, sometimes there's that reticence. But so you've all of you have touched on this in some way or another, but what is, you know, one of your, I guess, proudest achievements, either as chairwoman or in your own careers? Professor Lousin?
Well, I think I can talk about it now. Obviously, within my own career, there have been what I was able to do at CONCON, and being the first woman parliamentarian in any legislature, which I don't talk about as a first woman, you know, I mean, that gets crazy, but you want to keep talking about that. But those were wonderful jobs where I didn't think I could do the job, and it turned out nobody else could do it any better. So I ended up with the job and did okay. When I was the chair, 1995 to 1998, as a group, the board made the decision that we would have to advise the government of Armenia on certain issues. You may remember they were having, and I'm putting it very carefully, a real struggle about what to do. You remember when they started arresting people? Remember that one, Tamar? Some members of political parties. We decided not to go public. So there were letters that went to the prime minister, and they went over my signature. I think Lucy had to mail them. And later on, I met one of the people who worked with the Armenian government, and he said, "Oh, I know your name." And he mentioned those letters. And I said, "Does anybody read them?" He said, "Oh, yes. They take them very seriously, and everybody is very grateful that you don't go public with it." You know, we printed in the Los Angeles Times, Armenian Bar Association criticizes Armenia. Oh, come on. And he said, everybody's grateful for that. And I think that was the right decision. I think we should be very glad that we did it that way. You remember, Tamar, remember all of that?
It never stops.
Yeah.
Tamar, do you want to add anything?
Oh, it's hard. You know, it's been so many years. As I mentioned when we were talking together, I guess for me, the highlights were the establishment of the Babayan Fund, which gave us the opportunity in the early years to bring over somewhere between 40 and 50 guests that ranged from the Chief Justice of the Constitutional Court at the time, the head of the Journalists Association, the founder of the Union of Advocates, who are defense attorneys for the most part, Alvina Gulumian, one of our stars, a jurist who served with great distinction on the European Court of Human Rights, and for whom some of us had to write letters in the same context Anne was speaking of later on. Law students who were studying in the United States, a number of people who were legal scholars. Throughout this whole transitional period from Soviet to independent, and then during independence, through the Karabakh movement, through the war, through the transitions in society. And the other item I feel very proud of is Tom Samoyan and I founded Arlex International Limited in 1998 and had almost 25 wonderful years practicing American law with hundreds of law students, interns, young lawyers, people who went into all kinds of fields later on. Our whole idea was to have a think and do shop, to have people come in, get their training and go off in entrepreneurial settings, serve in government, serve in NGOs, find their own business routes. And basically we taught ethics, and we taught how to survive in an environment where everything's changing under your feet. It was probably the most interesting legal experience I've had. A lot of interaction with many, many different segments of the Armenian community worldwide, most of whom arrived in Armenia never having seen the place, and gave us a half-hour lecture as to how they would personally improve the place in no time. And if only their advice would be followed, Armenia would be another Singapore. And after a while, we started singing songs because it just corresponded with Broadway musicals. I think I would sort of reframe Kierkegaard in saying that one who dares to lose footing loses her way for a time. But if you don't dare, and you don't try something, you lose yourself. And I think that's the principle we operated under, perhaps naively, but it proved that you could be an ethical lawyer in a transitional situation of a democracy building state with all its jags up and down, back and forth, and all its changes of personality, if you care enough. And we cared.
That's fantastic. Sonya?
I'm looking at the questions on the chat, and that one has captured my imagination about the vision for the future. Can I answer that one, Anahid?
Oh, sure. Sure.
Okay. Vision for the future for the Armenian Bar Association. I love this question because I really believe that there's strength in numbers. And the backing of everybody that's in the Armenian Bar Association has resulted in some really extraordinary events and really enormous impact in some of the most unlikely ways. I cite, for example, having Rod Rosenstein come to the Bar Association meeting in New York a few years ago.
Oh, yeah.
That was really extraordinary. The other thing that I can think of is an international visitor like Hrant Dink coming to talk to us in Philadelphia months before he was assassinated. I think we don't realize that we have presence and history and staying power and power that we can move in circles that we haven't moved in before, that we can get speakers that we haven't gotten before, that we have a presence not just in Armenian life, but outside in regular American legal life, and that we have a presence as a leading bar association, not just in California, but as a national organization. And I think we should capitalize on that going forward. And as I said before, be bold and see, not just as advice to somebody who's younger, but the whole organization itself should take steps to be bold and try new things and move forward into this next century, feeling confident and powerful and doing different things and making different things happen, not just here in this country, but in Armenia and Artsakh too.
Agreed. Thank you. Lisa?
I don't know what I could say to compare with, wow, what everything, whatever everyone else said. On the on the future of the Armenian Bar Association, I have the advantage or disadvantage of not having been as involved as the rest of you in recent years. I kind of haven't been very involved over the past 15 years or so. So I'll say something that's maybe ignorant of work that is going on, or something that is already going on. But some of the things that Tamar and others have described in terms of exchanging judges or bringing guests over from Armenia, or supporting particular individual jurists in Armenia, maybe that needs to come back to the forefront for the association. And again, my apologies if a lot of that is being done already. Lucy's gonna, swing a broom at me and tell me that's being done already. But that's very powerful. I remember even a small thing, maybe not small, I don't mean to use the word small, but again, Canadians, I remember when I first got involved with the Armenian Bar Association, Vaskan Kabayan had gone to Yerevan State and set up a law library there. Yeah. And maybe that meant he took 2 suitcases of books and put them on a shelf, but I'm sure it was more than that. And it was a very powerful example of something to be done with and for Armenia. So those kinds of, I hate to use the word exchange programs, and support of young Armenians there, or bringing young Armenians or Armenian jurists from there over here, that sort of thing, become more back to the forefront more.
Thank you.
If I could jump in and say that was the first Armenian Bar Association project in Yerevan. We set up the library and computers for the law library, law division at Yerevan State. And yes, suitcases of books, that's how we did it.
Interestingly, Tamar, it's something that we're working on with the Artsakh State University. I don't know if people know, but we have a pro bono clinic at Artsakh State University that we fund. And so that type of work continues. I'm interested, if I could, first I want to say the first executive director was Vahe Masurlian, and he's on the call as well. And I think the thing that makes me so happy is it's been 34 years of this organization's history, and everyone is still not just involved, but here, present, engaged, involved. I received the most wonderful email from Tamar on December 25th, 2020, encouraging me to keep going as the year was becoming really challenging. And so if I can just pivot, Tamar, you and I had some really interesting conversations when things were really in the thick of it with the Artsakh, with the war on Artsakh. I'd be interested to get your thoughts, not just on what it was like for an American lawyer to be practicing in Armenia, but also you and Tom did that and you were in both places, but Tom just completely relocated and gave up this incredible job with a wonderful pay scale, I'm sure, and went to Armenia when there wasn't running water, electricity, and then he stayed. He actually stuck it through. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like to do that, and then what it would be like if someone wanted to do that today?
Yes, all of that's true. And I think when you feel that Armenians and Armenia, and by Armenia, I don't mean Yerevan, I mean Armenia worldwide, is under existential threat, and you can do something about it, you make a decision. Some of it has to do with your circumstances. Tom didn't have a wife or a family to worry about. He had made his mark in other careers. He had been a linguistics professor. He was a fine musician, a church scholar, and then a lawyer. I mean, I always talk about him as a Renaissance man in the true sense. But Tom has another quality that I see in a lot of Armenians, even in the worst of times, and that's 2 feet planted on the ground with a very practical sense of what you can and can't do. It was never easy working in Armenia. It was never easy fitting in because, like it or not, all of us who have not been born and brought up in Armenia are outsiders. And when you accept that, you swallow the worst of the problem. You'll never be accepted, you'll never be sought out, and you'll never be the focus of anything there. But if your ego has been satisfied in other areas, you can afford then to be the back office. And that's very much what we did. I mean, all the other stuff was great. You know, hundreds of firms coming, clients coming in. I mean, I'll give you some numbers. Arlex advised, and I did no transactional work. I was, you know, the extra person. Arlex advised on projects that brought $3 billion inbound as investments in Armenia during those years. The biggest projects, government of Armenia Eurobonds, for example, the Kafesyan Fund's presence in Armenia, the first project, building of the Marriott Hotel, where the old Armenian matters of first impression, syndicated project financing with second mortgages, international arbitration clauses and award enforcements, public-private partnerships, work for hire intellectual property clauses, international loan-backed bond issuances. These were all new concepts that Arlex did to pave the way. And that's the only way you can do it. You have to train people, you have to have a lot of patience, and then you have to send them out on their own. And so every time an Arlex employee became a lawyer in a bank, or a member of parliament, or on a drafting committee for something, or a teacher in a law school, we had great pride in that person. And we also had a lot of duds. We had people that turned out to be not to be good investments, let's put it that way. I think with Artsakh, a whole new page opened with the Second Artsakh War. And the shell shock, the loss of 5,000 young lives needlessly, the sense of being a loser and being on the wrong side created such havoc within Armenian society that it became a different kind of environment. And I think for someone to make a commitment to take Armenian citizenship and stay there is way above and beyond the call of duty. Tom could have come back to a very comfortable life in the United States where the rest of his family is. But he said to me, I've made my decision and I will stay here for the rest of my life. And I'll do what I can do. Right now, practicing law is not what I'm doing. But he has a very rich intellectual life. And our charitable organization, which was formed out of all the prophets of Arlex, Arag 29, the 29th proverb, without vision, the people will perish. That goes on. And we've done all kinds of interesting things there too, from translating and dubbing Korean historical drama for Armenian TV, to holding seminars and classes and how to for people who have no income and have no possibility of getting a job in a bad political environment, and on and on and on. If you want to go to the website and have a look, it's encyclopedic, and that's Tom's work. I can't take a lot of credit for any of that. One of the things that we did during this time was to translate medieval Armenian novels to give people a sense of what our history has been, because we're right back where we were in the Middle Ages and in the 1850s, being a client state of every major power and a buffer state to all. And this is a very difficult thing for Armenians and for the future of Armenia. But here's where all of you come in. And Taline and Anahid and Lucy are right at the forefront of this. This is the time to start thinking, what can Armenia do and be as we go into the age of AI, and as borders and languages and such don't matter as much as they ever did. My grandchildren in Armenia, who were born and brought up there, are very close to their cousins in Charlottesville, Virginia, and Purdue University. They hardly see each other, but because of the internet, they talk all the time. They see each other all the time. And they relate. They understand each other. It may be in English. It may be who knows in what next year. Because the kids here don't speak Armenian and the kids there speak very good English. What I'm trying to say is the barriers that we faced all those years ago when the Bar Association was formed, in large measure aren't there anymore. And we have to talk to one another and forgive one another and be kind to one another and overlook the faults that we find so easily in order to exist, persist, and triumph. And triumph to me means a healthy, educated, forward-looking, and united Armenia across the world. Who's better positioned to do that than the Armenian Bar Association? Even though, like Lisa, I've been away for many, many years, it will still always be to me the place where a lot got done and still is getting, and more will be done.
Thank you, Tamar. That is very inspiring, and I do hope that everybody on this call, I see a lot of our board members are on, a lot of our volunteers on our committee chairs. I think those words are very inspiring. The message of unity and the message of continuing and persevering. I do want to give an opportunity for people to ask more questions. I think I saw some hands raised. So do you want to open it up for the questions, Lucy?
So the way that we would do that is we would promote you to, or actually we would allow you to talk. So there's a button that I could press. If you have a question, I know Richard Toshchin had a question. I can allow for that. So here you are. Oops, I brought on the wrong person. Oh, I brought on Richard Hovhannissian, Professor Hovhannissian. Thank you for being here.
The father of 3 ArmenBar members.
Yes, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I probably don't know how to not, don't know how to undo that. Oh, remove permission to talk. There we go.
Okay. Wow, this is very.
I don't see Mr. Toshchin anymore. Unless he raises his hand, I probably can't see him. But if someone else has a question, please, we can give you the permission to talk. Just need you to raise your hand. Or to comment, you know,
And
choose.
yeah, thanks for all the comments in the chat.
Okay.
Well, there is somebody who had a hand raised.
Somebody did raise a hand here. Let me see who that is. Brugera. Here we go. Judge Brugera, you're on.
Good afternoon. I want to thank you for today and for all of the commitment and hard work you've done. It's truly a pleasure to hear you, and what a proud day it is here for me. And you've all been so important in my life. About 10 minutes after Governor Deukmejian called to tell me that I had been appointed, and he was appointing me, Bob Philipposian called and congratulated me. He was the first one talking about mentorship and helping each other. I don't think I just cannot not imagine a group that helps each other the way you have. And you've moved me so much this afternoon, and I really want to thank you. That's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Judge Brugera.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
Here we go.
Sir
Tago Tasjan, allow to talk. Here we go. Tago, you have to unmute yourself.
Unmute. Is that me?
Yes.
Hold on, let me hang up the phone. Okay, hi. It was so nice to see so many faces that I haven't seen in years. I just wanted to say congratulations to the wonderful chairwomen of this organization, of this great organization. I've been on and off like some of you for many years, even though I started back in '89. I wanted to tell you about my mentor when I was in law school. It was my second cousin, Hajian Bedrosian of Rhode Island. Her father and my father were first cousins. And Hajian probably went to law school late 60s. When she went to Brown University for her undergraduate, one of her professors told her that girls don't go to law school. And she went, determined to go. She went to Suffolk University, and she was one of 10 women in her graduating class. And when she became an attorney, some of the older waspy men in Rhode Island said, "You don't belong here." And she promised herself, she said, "I'm going to outlive these bastards." Sure enough. So with fond memories of her being my mentor and giving me great guidance along the way in life, I have great respect for women attorneys, women in general, and Armenian women in particular. So thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and Tamar, I do use Arak 29 all the time. I just discovered it about a month ago. It is fantastic. It's amazing what resources are on there, things I had never thought about. I am doing my Lenten prayers using Gregory of whichever Gregory what am I using? No, Saint Nerses. No, I'm doing. Who am I using? Is it Saint Nerses? Yes.
Gregory of Noteg.
Prayers using the website and the daily connection to. No, I'm sorry, Saint Gregory of Noteg. So the website and the daily connection to the to his writings. So thank you all for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you, Halva.
there are more questions, we can allow you to come in the same way. Some really wonderful comments. Our former chairs I see here, Armen
Can
Hovanesian,
I hear people?
Gerard Kasabian, who was chair just immediately before me. Yeah, and I think maybe no more questions.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you to our panelists for sharing your stories. I think we should do this every year. In planning for this webinar, we had a discussion of potentially doing an oral history project for the bar, which would be great. Oh, we have a David Balabanian. We talked about potentially doing that, which would be a great project.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey,
Oh, we can hear you.
that was a wonderful program. Thank you so much for organizing it and including me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
David, could we have a quick story of how you became the first chair of the Armenian Bar Association?
I went to this meeting that was announced in the legal newspaper. I thought, gee, an Armenian lawyers meeting. It's hard to imagine there is such a thing. I'll go down there and I'll just sit in the back of the room and nobody will notice. And I get there and the person who organized the meeting isn't there. He's become the former foreign minister of Armenia in my absence. So we had to pick a chairman and they went around the room and nobody wanted to do it. Finally, somebody said, pointed at me and said, you're the only person here who's ever been the president of a bar association. You've got to do it. And that seemed a fairly effective argument, but also the fact that I had a cell phone line that everybody could use. So that was my principal qualification. And here we all are. Thank you all. Really, very impressive. I'm so proud of what you've done. Occasionally something that you do works out, and this is one of those situations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We also got a comment from Richard Owanesian in the question and answer. So
Yeah, I want to thank you all also for attending, and it's been such an honor to be in your company and really to get to know all of you. Some of you I've just met as part of this program, and I think the program really demonstrates the leadership of women in this organization, and that it is the floor, not the ceiling, and that it will be very exciting to see how the rising female stars of this organization will really help to grow it. I think it's also a reminder to all Armenian organizations to be mindful of the importance of cultivating female leaders. Representation matters, and young girls and women need to feel a sense of belonging. And I think that can only happen if women are given a seat at the table. And in the words of Shirley Chisholm, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair.
Well done.
okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all for attending.